completely horrified that this could happen, especially someone that I know would even ever do anything like it. I think it's terrible, and I feel really sorry for the girl and her family.
2009's Megan Wants a Millionaire was centered around Megan Hosterman, a Florida-born model already famous from a bunch of reality TV appearances. In her own show, 17 wealthy men competed to become Megan's husband. They performed various tasks and challenges, and took Hosterman out on expensive dates. Whichever men impressed Megan the most would get to marry her. From the beginning, the show was already pretty controversial. All of the men were alleged millionaires, so the show was accused of classism. The premise was also accused of being misogynistic. Megan's role as a future trophy wife made some critics uncomfortable. Ratings were low and the critical response wasn't much better. But all of this controversy was completely eclipsed by the gruesome and disturbing actions of one of its unhinged contestants. 32-year-old Ryan Jenkins made it all the way to the finals of the show. He summarized his own personality as, quote, "a little bit of a Prince Charming, a little bit of a bad boy."
A little bit of a Prince Charming, a little bit of a bad boy.
And was later described as having, quote, "cocky charm." But when he reached the final, he didn't win. Megan Hosterman, who liked Ryan Jenkins a lot and had been texting him outside of the show, wanted to choose him as the winner. But producers encouraged her to pick another contestant, who they believed the public preferred. Jenkins dealt with his loss by immediately heading to Vegas, finding another blonde model, and marrying her 2 days later. This woman was 28-year-old Jasmine Fiore. She was a model and a commercial actress. The two were only married for 5 months. Shortly after the wedding, Jenkins brutally murdered his partner before dumping her body and going on the run.
The woman whose body was found stuffed in a suitcase in California has been identified as a former swimsuit model now. Police say 28-year-old Jasmine Fiore was strangled, and her husband of just 5 months is now a person of interest.
Jenkins and Fiore had a complicated relationship, with lots of fighting and arguing. Jenkins was very controlling and abusive, and was very jealous of Fiore's relationships with her ex-partners. 3 months after they got married, Jenkins was charged with battery constituting domestic violence, and it's alleged that there was much more physical abuse. But things swiftly became a lot worse. 5 months after Fiore and Jenkins got married, on August 14th, 2009, the two were seen at a San Diego nightclub in the early hours of the morning. And Fiore was never seen alive again. A little over 24 hours later, her body was discovered in an alley in Buena Park, California, around a 90-minute drive from where she was last seen. She had been beaten, mutilated, and strangled, and her naked body had been stuffed inside a suitcase and thrown in a dumpster. Her teeth and fingers had been removed. Her body, which was at first unrecognizable, was later identified by the serial numbers on her breast implants. But one more death was still to come. Jenkins then went on the run. He left Los Angeles and traveled over 400 miles to Nevada to pick up his speedboats. He then traveled another 1,000 miles north to cross the border into Canada. 6 days after Fiore was last seen alive, on August 20th, 2009, an arrest warrant was issued for Jenkins. The same day, Jenkins and his half-sister arrived at a motel in British Columbia. According to some sources, Jenkins' half-sister left the motel around 20 minutes after checking out, never to return. 3 days later, when the two were set to check out, Jenkins was found dead in the hotel room. He had used the belt to hang himself from the clothes rack. And so that brings us back to Megan Wants a Millionaire, and back to lost media. Immediately after police announced that Jenkins was a suspect in relation to the murder of Fiore, VH1 put the show on an indefinite hiatus. The show had a total of 6 episodes. The first 3 had aired, but the other 3 never did. In February of 2020, Megan Hosterman herself uploaded episode 4 and 5 to her YouTube channel. The 6th episode still remains lost, and it might never resurface. Also cancelled was the 3rd season of I Love Money, another reality TV show. Also due to air on VH1, the show featured mental and physical challenges, stars from other reality TV shows, and a big cash prize of $250,000. Filming on this 3rd season had wrapped, and, in a weird twist, Ryan Jenkins had been crowned the winner. The 3rd season of I Love Money was due to air in January 2010. But after the deaths of Fiore and Jenkins, it was understandably cancelled. It's now another piece of lost media. This controversy had a huge effect on the reality TV industry. These days, producers vet potential contestants much more carefully and pay close attention to aftercare. Mark Cronin, co-founder of the production company behind Megan Wants a Millionaire, has since commented on the controversy. He claimed the incident now influences, quote, every conversation I have during the approval process for a contestant or a cast member. And according to some, producers across reality TV are becoming more and more cautious every year, which of course is only a good thing. We don't know if we'll ever see the 6th episode of Megan Wants a Millionaire, but chances are we probably never will. Before we move any further, I want to give a quick thanks to today's sponsor, BetterHelp. So a few months back, around the Hitogata video, I went through a pretty bad burnout. That strained my mental health a bit. Don't worry, I'm better now. But that's why I'm excited to talk about BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a platform designed to make therapy more affordable and accessible. By answering a few simple questions, you'll be matched with a therapist who'll fit your needs. And if it doesn't work out, no problem. You can swap anytime at no additional cost. This makes seeking professional help easy and remote, from the comfort and privacy of your own home. I've noticed that simply having someone to talk to, let alone professional, can really up my mood and motivate me to push forward. We all have our own issues and struggles, it's completely normal. And even when things are going well, sometimes we just need someone to talk to. So if you're struggling, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in the description below, or go to betterhelp.com/Blameitonjorge to get 10% off your first month, so you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. Again, that's betterhelp.com/Blameitonjorge. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video.
The Dick Cavett Show.
The Dick Cavett Show wasn't just one show. Instead, it was the title of several different talk shows, all aired during different periods and on many different channels. These shows had one thing in common. They were all hosted by Dick Cavett, a mega famous TV personality, sort of like the David Letterman of his time. In total, his shows ran for almost 30 years, and he and his team produced hundreds of episodes. But in 1971, a now infamous episode was recorded. Filmed in front of a live studio audience, that episode still hasn't been publicly released, and it probably never will. On a June episode that year, Dick Cavett's guests were New York Post columnist Pete Hamill and 72-year-old health guru Jerome Rodell, who had founded a health and wellness publishing company. This company, Rodell Inc., is still well known for producing world-famous magazines like Men's Health, Women's Health, and Runner's World. All pretty ironic given what happens next. During his interview, Rodell repeatedly discussed how healthy he felt, joking, quote, "I'm in such good health that I fell down a long flight of stairs yesterday, and I laughed all the way." He also proclaimed, quote, "I've decided to live to be 100, and, quote, I never felt better in my life." After finishing his interview with Cavett, Rodell then sat beside Pete Hamill. Soon after, Rodell's head fell back, his mouth fell open, his face went pale, and he began making a snoring sound. he had died of a heart attack. Exactly what happened next is contested. Some sources claim Cavett jokingly said, quote, "Are we boring you, Mr. Rodell?" But Cavett has always contested this claim, saying he can't remember making that joke. The commonly accepted version of events, and the one Cavett tells, is that he and Hamill quickly realized something was wrong, and Cavett asked if there was a doctor present in the audience. The audience, at first, thought it was a joke, assuming the events were part of some prearranged prank. But it wasn't. Rodell was dead. According to Cavett, Rodell was a funny and quirky guy. In another later interview, Cavett claimed to have the whole recording, including the now famous death, recorded on tape. Weirdly, Cavett says he's often approached by people who claim to have seen the episode on TV, and when he tells them it was never shown on TV, they seem confused. Yet another strange example of the curious Mandela effect.
The Joey Bishop Show. Joey. Starring Joey Bishop.
Not as disturbing or creepy as our other entries, but a famous and unexpected death with some seriously strange repercussions. The Joey Bishop Show was an American sitcom, which ran on both NBC and CBS between 1961 and 1965. It starred American entertainer Joey Bishop, and focused, in the words of IMDb, around the, quote, misadventures of a Hollywood public relations man. Other themes and plotlines included Bishop's family, his influence, or lack of influence, in Hollywood, and a load of deadpan humor and insults. And one Season 3 episode is now considered lost. Known only by the mysterious name Number 85, the fully filmed episode featured an entertainer named Von Meter. This comedian was most well known for his impressions of John F. Kennedy, who was the US president at the time. But a week after the episode was filmed, John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Killed in Dallas, Texas by Lee Harvey Oswald, JFK's murder is one of the most well-known deaths of all time. When Oswald shot him, Kennedy was riding with his wife in an open-topped car as part of a presidential procession. Because of Kennedy's assassination, episode 85 of The Joey Bishop Show was swiftly pulled by NBC and never aired. It was also allegedly destroyed. Even worse for Von Meter, JFK's death basically ended his career. He no longer appeared on TV, his albums were pulled from circulation, and his bookings all dried up. Meter had been so massively typecast that no one wanted to hire the guy for any other roles, even though he was a multi-talented man with music, comedy, and acting skills. Calling himself, quote, a living reminder of tragedy, Meter then struggled with alcohol and drugs before having a religious awakening and reinventing himself as a club singer. He died in 2004 at the age of 68. And that brings us back to the Joey Bishop Show. Given the unfortunate timing and rumors of destruction, the episode will likely remain lost. Forever. The popular show Unsolved Mysteries has been broadcast on many different channels and platforms, and you probably know the version that currently airs on Netflix. Though it's had some pretty big gaps in its run, the show has been airing since 1987, and over 600 episodes have been produced. It features segments on missing people, unsolved murders, unusual mysteries, UFO abductions, paranormal activity, and other related cases. But in 2002, one of its fully produced segments was never publicly released. On June 13, 2001, 51-year-old Dallas elementary school teacher Sharon Eugenia Davis went missing. Unsolved Mysteries produced a segment on the case, and that segment was due to air in the spring after her disappearance. But before the airing date, Sharon's longtime husband Ron Davis, who had already repeatedly declined the team's request for an interview, forcibly asked producers not to release the segment. and so it went unreleased, and it is now considered lost. Maybe the segment is locked up in some vault somewhere, or maybe it's simply gone forever. Whatever the case, prepare to meet the guiltiest seeming not guilty man you've ever seen. The morning Sharon Eugenia Davis went missing, she dropped her daughter, Autumn, at a bus depot between 7 and 7:30 a.m. Autumn was setting off to work at her summer job for the day. Later in the morning, Sharon was due to attend a training session for a teaching job, but she never arrived, and she was never seen again. 5 days after her disappearance, investigators found Sharon's vehicle in the parking lot of a fitness center where she was a frequent visitor. This parking lot sat less than a 15-minute walk from where Sharon and Ron lived. One of the vehicle's windows had been broken. It had been wiped clean of fingerprints, and according to staff, the vehicle had been parked there since the day after Sharon's disappearance. And aside from those details, little else is known about what happened to Sharon and where she or her body might be. And pretty much all suspicion points in the direction of her husband, Ron Davis. Ron has repeatedly refused to help with investigations. He hasn't cooperated with media, investigators, or even his own family. On the evening of Sharon's disappearance, the couple's college-age kids, Autumn and Ronnie, both asked Ron to contact the police. He refused and didn't file an official missing persons report until around 24 hours after she went missing. He then refused to talk to authorities for the first 3 weeks of their investigations, and has repeatedly discouraged media outlets from discussing the case. The first time Ron spoke to police, he made them wait for 2.5 hours outside of his home. One of his first questions in this initial interview was, quote, "Am I a suspect?" And for reasons that aren't quite clear, he recorded the entire conversation. He didn't offer an alibi in that interview, and hasn't offered an alibi since. Later in investigations, Ron Davis was asked to take a polygraph test. Because he was unwilling to take the test, he told police he would only do so if the questions were given to him in advance. He knew that they wouldn't agree to his terms, and so the polygraph test never took place. Ron told investigators that Sharon took between $10,000 and $25,000 from their home before disappearing, but he refused to show officers the place where he claimed the money had been stashed in his home. When they asked to see the location, he simply told them, quote, "That's none of your business." Ron has refused to explain his whereabouts during the time his wife disappeared, and has offered several different explanations for where Sharon might be. His various explanations have included claims that she left voluntarily, experienced a psychotic episode, got involved with drug dealers, or checked herself into a psychiatric facility. Now neither Autumn nor Ron speak to their father, and they continue to believe that Ron caused their mother's disappearance. Autumn has told reporters, quote, "I think he knows exactly what's going on." While Ronnie, when asked about his father and mother, stated, quote, "I think she's dead, unfortunately, and he's still hiding something." Ron, so it seems, continues to claim Sharon left of her own free will, and that she is alive and well. No sources claim Ron ever expressed panic over Sharon's well-being or whereabouts, and he never appeared publicly to display his concern. In one letter to the Dallas Observer, he claimed, quote, "The most logical explanation for her not contacting our children is that she is not taking her daily medication." But at the time of her disappearance, Sharon, according to many sources, wasn't taking any regular mental health medication, and there's no sign she'd ever suffered from any form of serious mental illness. So why exactly didn't Ron Davis want this segment of Unsolved Mysteries to air? Is it because he's guilty? Because the show might have implied his guilt? Or because he might know something he can't or won't admit? Either way, this now lost episode of Unsolved Mysteries will probably never be seen. If you have any information about the case, please contact the Dallas Police Department. All tips and leads are appreciated.
£41 gives us a total of £151. Come on, a nice warm round of applause.
One of the most well-known British game shows of all time, Bullseye, in its original form, ran from 1981 to 1995, and more than 300 episodes were produced. Originally hosted by comedian Jim Bowen, the darts-based show involved quiz questions, catchphrases, professional and amateur dart players, a weird bull-shaped mascot, and loads of silly jokes. At its peak, it attracted up to 20 million viewers per episode. On May 28, 1989, a now infamous episode, and now partially lost episode, was recorded. It featured a contestant named John William Cooper, who had already murdered 2 people when the recording took place. Before police could catch him, he would go on to commit many more crimes. When the episode aired, it all seemed pretty normal, and it didn't include anything unusual or notable. In the small amounts of footage we still have, Cooper competes, chats, and laughs. He also talks about his passion for scuba diving, which Bowen refers to as an unusual hobby. But under that apparently normal surface, Cooper was a sinister and dangerous character. A serial killer and sex offender, a judge later described the man as being guilty of evil wickedness. And the story of Cooper goes way beyond Bullseye. John William Cooper was born on September 3rd, 1944. He lived in the small Welsh town of Milford Haven with his wife and 2 children. In 1979, he won £94,000 in a UK newspaper competition, a sum of money now worth the equivalent of over £500,000, or almost $650,000. But he swiftly drank and gambled most of the money away, giving very little of it to his family. When the money ran dry, he needed a way to maintain his lifestyle. He turned to robberies and burglaries, breaking into a large number of homes with the help of a balaclava and a sawn-off shotgun. He typically targeted large homes inhabited by single women. In 1998, 9 years after the Bullseye episode was filmed, John Cooper was arrested and charged in connection to 30 cases of robbery and burglary. He was caught after burglarizing the home of local teacher Sheila Clark. After Cooper tied her up, she managed to free herself and pressed the panic button in her home. After police arrested Cooper, they searched his property. They found the keys of more than 500 different houses, so he'd probably robbed many more homes than police could tie him to. They also found many stolen goods and mementos from the robberies he committed. He was sentenced to 14 years in prison, although he eventually served a little less time. But this was only the beginning. Though police didn't know yet, Cooper was also responsible for some much more gruesome acts. On December 22nd, 1985, Cooper had murdered brother and sister Richard and Helen Thomas before setting fire to their home. He lived less than a 15-minute walk from the scene of the crime and had broken into their home with the intention of burglarizing it. He thought Helen would be home alone, but when Richard Thomas pulled up in his car, Cooper panicked and murdered them both. Afterward, he set fire to the house in an attempt to cover up his crimes. 4 years later, on June 29, 1989, and around a month after the Bullseye episode had aired, married couple Peter and Gwenda Dixon had been vacationing in Pembrokeshire. They were camping just a short distance from John Cooper's home. Around 10 minutes from their tent, they wandered into some woods, where they found John Cooper carrying a shotgun. Here, Cooper forced Peter Dixon to hand over his bank card and reveal his PIN number. Cooper then shot both of them in the face and left their bodies tied up. Gwenda's body was naked from the waist down, implying he'd sexually assaulted her. Once more, he got away with his crimes, and once more, he continued his violent spree. In March 1996, 7 years after Cooper killed the Dixons, 5 local teenagers had been wandering through some fields. It was becoming dark, and they were heading to the woods. Here, they met John Cooper, who was wearing a balaclava and carrying both a flashlight and a sawn-off shotgun. He raped a 16-year-old girl at knife point and sexually assaulted a 15-year-old girl. He then forced the kids to hand over whatever money they had. 2 years later, as we've covered, Cooper was arrested and charged for his burglaries. While in prison, he was interviewed in relation to the murders of all 4 people he killed. And because detectives thought he might be related to the crimes, he underwent 4 entire days of questioning. As part of the investigations, he was even assessed by the forensics team. The forensic results, and many others, matched John Cooper to the 4 murders and the sexual assaults of the 2 teenagers. Investigators found connections to clothes, guns, and more. And Cooper's habit of keeping trophies and mementos from his crimes was one of the reasons he was caught. He was arrested and charged in May 2009. Cooper consistently denied any responsibility for the murders. Unsurprisingly, he was later diagnosed as a psychopath, and he has all the typical traits. Cooper's appearance on the show tells us a lot about his narcissism. He knew millions of people would be watching the show, and he knew he might be recognized. Perhaps for John Cooper, appearing on Bullseye was just another challenge. He had always been a gambler after all. Now John Cooper is 78 years old. He remains in prison, and he continues to deny any role in the rapes and murders of his victims. Some say we don't even know how guilty he might truly be. The man has been connected with other unsolved deaths in and around his local area. However many crimes he might be responsible for, John William Cooper is one of the most brutal and arrogant killers the UK has ever produced. At the time of recording this video, only a few short clips of John Cooper's Bullseye appearance can be found online. So, as of now, the episode is considered partially lost. But it might not stay that way forever. At least one rerun of the show was aired on a different UK TV channel. So if anyone recorded the showing, there's a chance we might still see the episode in its entirety. Stay safe, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.